Hello, Capsulars, and welcome to Talking in Stations. This is AFish, and today we're going to be welcoming a coalition who is forming up in Eve Echoes. It's between Elysium and OP4S. Now, we're going to be having the leadership from Elysium. Unfortunately, the leadership from OP4S is not able to join us today, but we are going to be talking about some of the large battles that they've had forming up. We're talking over 200 players, a minimum in these battles. We're going to be talking about some of the strategies they used and why they're forming up, some of the activity that they've got going on in the south. Just really exciting to see how fast everything is progressing in Echoes. We're also going to be taking a look at a few ship designs and give them a little bit of a roast in terms of how to fit your ships and what not to do. So without further ado, let's welcome our special guest from Elysium and talk about this new coalition that's been forming. Hey guys, welcome. This is Faith Steiner and Bloody here. Do you guys want to give a little introduction to those who don't know you?
Bloody, do you want to go ahead?
Sure, I am the CEO of SSS, Spacefarers Spectral Solutions, part of the Elysium Alliance.
And I'm Faith Steiner. I am the CEO of Equinox Industries and part of Elysium Alliance as well.
So tell me, because I know OP4S isn't here today, but OP4S and Elysium are now forming a coalition. So from as far as we know, this is one of the first coalitions that has formed in Eve Echoes. How is that going? What is that like to manage that amount of players? And how many players are we talking about?
Well, the coalition actually exists between quite a few alliances. I'm not going to name drop the others at this time. So we manage a few thousand people, and it can really be difficult at times.
I think last numbers I've heard of was around 2,500 to 3,000 plus players, depending. I mean, the corp's obviously growing by the day, so it's really hard to make an exact estimate.
That's insane. I mean, I know, we had pretty large battles in Nova Empire. I never got so full force in a second galaxy, but I feel like managing, a team of a couple hundred can sometimes be overwhelming. So I can't imagine a couple thousand. In terms of battles, what is that like? What kind of battles are we seeing?
Definitely large fleet numbers, so we're testing the servers as much as possible and the gates.
Definitely. We were actually quite surprised once everything is on grid that the servers are pretty stable, actually, especially with the large, like 300, 400, 500 people fleets crashing against each other, bringing the system limit, like getting close to the system limit. However, one thing we do notice is that there is definitely still some performance issues going on. Like, especially if you see like 300, 400 people warp in one bubble, you will just have a 10-second freeze.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit chaotic, but otherwise, from gameplay perspective, it actually goes really well.
It's too funny you mentioned that. We did a little bit of a battle ourselves in a brawl, and we found that as soon as people undocked fairly quickly, there was a little bit of a delay, a little bit of a lag there. But for the most part, I mean, I've been pretty impressed with the amount of people that this game has been able to accommodate. Like, I mean, I feel like the numbers are pretty solid in that front. So tell me a little bit about maybe the best engagement or one of the largest engagements you guys have had so far. And what was it like coordinating? Because we only have 10 people who are allowed per fleet. Do you guys all just go in one area on Discord? Do you use TeamSpeak? How does that work for your team?
Right now, we're using Discord, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, to be honest. We're trying to look for something maybe a little different to use, but we generally have one large fleet commander and then fleet commanders for each subsection. Different classes of ships will also be used for different objectives and different primaries.
And Faith, how have you felt like those numbers have been, like in terms of, I mean, are you one of the fleet commanders yourself?
I may be a CEO, but I do not consider myself quite ready as a fleet commander quite yet. However, I'm definitely interested in picking up those skills as well. Coming from EO, I've been primarily just a pilot, not a fleet commander. It is definitely chaotic at times. Nobody can argue about that. When you have a certain amount of people, entropy just increases infinitely. It's like just one person can completely screw up an entire fleet, and you do need a certain amount of discipline, and you need to demand a certain amount of discipline. Otherwise, it just won't work. Because like if two people start shooting, I don't know, neutrals, for example, in the middle of a fleet operation against any kind of like red corporation or red alliance, it it can become quite quite a horrible experience overall, especially given the limitations on the diplomacy side of things in Echoes yet.
100%. Now, do you guys use any specific doctrines for your fleets? Because, I mean, this is a large amount of people. We've tested out fleet doctrines on our end, but I wasn't sure if there was any kind of fleet doctrine you guys had implemented or tried out in terms of testing game mechanics.
Well, in any type of game like this, you absolutely have to have some form of fleet doctrine. We have some in practice, and we also have some other ones that we're working on and testing right now.
Any ones that you're willing to share?
Absolutely not. That's operation security.
All right. Well, hey, never hurts to try, right?
Let's just say we were playing around with some fittings that are not necessarily what you would consider meta or even intended fitting on the respective hull. But that's about as much as I'm willing to share.
Ah, interesting. Well, I always like people who are willing to test out the boundaries and kind of test things because we have noticed a few differences in Ebecos. I mean, I've never been a big EVE Online player, but a lot of our vets have told me there's just been a ton of differences, a ton of new. It just feels like there's a lot of little Easter eggs you got to kind of hunt out and find for yourself. And then I too am in the same boat. I really want to learn more about fleet commanding, but it is newer to me. So I'm kind of just integrating myself. I'm much more of a team builder, and I kind of like to give everyone the tools they need to succeed. So I guess in terms of all these battles you've had, the one that I heard most about was when you guys went into Esoteria, and you guys kind of came in from the bottom. How did that go? What was that like, coordinating that amount of people, and how many would you say have showed up to the battle?
For the one that you're referring to, we had about 140 for Elysium, along with a couple other alliances and corporations that were assisting in that operation as well. We just basically formed up in our target location, and then we moved over to Astoria. We have control of period basis and Paragon Sol, so movement to that area wasn't really much of a problem for us.
And how long would you say it took to coordinate the migration? I just threw up a map here to show people how far Paragon Sol and Esoteria is. I mean, that's a fair decent amount of jumps. So how, did you guys go from jump to jump, or did you guys kind of tell people to get to a specific gate?
We actually did pilot the majority of the way manually. Of course, especially in our own territory, we did set up a certain system that was like the group up spot, and so people could just like autopilot there at their own leisure. Big majority actually did start on docking from our staging station from where we came. I think the way we did it was we stagger autopiloted a good way into Esoteria. Like the cruiser fleet had a +2, so was 2 systems ahead, and then the destroyers started autopiloting, and then the frigates at the end started piloting. But once we got to our group up system, everything after that was straight up manual piloting, and we're very, very happy that we have some really, really good and well-known FCs who can manage operations, especially on a large scale like this. So definitely a big shout out to our FCs here again, which makes this, I'd say, even possible. Like, of course, as I said earlier, a certain amount of discipline is required, but having that leadership, that commanding skills definitely is a very, very big part of pulling off a big 200, 300 player fleet, or even 150 player fleet successfully.
So now, speaking in terms of the place which you would call home in nullsec, you mentioned Paragon Sol, Esoteria. Is Esoteria an area you guys are looking to expand in, or is it just a place that you're looking to practice in before SAW comes out?
That's just strictly practice for now until maybe circumstances change and whatnot. We were getting to where we're going to start renting out properties to a lot of corporations that are looking to us for assistance, and to be able to kind of tuck them under our wings so they can help grow on their own. So we kind of need to find a place to put them.
100%. Now, would you say there was anything you saw in terms of your pilots that show that they need a lot more practice, or was there any kind of big accidents any of you guys had in terms of your team, or mistakes that you learned from having these battles?
I mean, to be fair, you never are a perfect being. You're a human. You always make mistakes, and we always tackle every operation as it is the best we could bring at that day. Of course, like the daily form is also a thing. Some people just like a week prior have like completely on their game. A week later, they might not be able to access their skills as good as they could an operation before. But in general, we just take every single operation as a huge chance of just like learning things, figuring new things out, especially about how Eve Echoes differs from Eve Online, and just like improving our practicing our fleet commanding skills, our fleet alignment skills, general discipline, be that in game or in comms. So yeah, it's practice. We literally take every single fleet as at least a practice fleet.
That's a really good, method to have. I know we do something similar because, again, practice makes perfect. The more that you play, the more that you're going to actually learn how to fly those fleets. So would you say there's a specific goal in the end of this war, or is it mostly just really understanding game mechanics?
My personal goal for this war, for this whole game, is to actually have us a nice little section of space that we claim our own, and everybody can just keep their hands off of it.
That's always the goal, right? Just to have your own, to plant your flag in that section of territory. But I mean, as a large coalition, would you say that pretty much all the teams you have formed up in the South? Or are you guys all over the place?
I'd say, yeah, please go ahead. You're probably more knowledgeable about that than me.
They are pretty much all based in the South. That's one of the reasons that we contacted and worked with these alliances and these other corporations to make sure that we could secure a good portion of the territory and have other borders that would be secure. And we knew we wouldn't have to worry about those and focus on one or two gates.
Now, even though that we don't have any corporation structures yet, based on your experience from this alliance warfare, is there anything you guys would like to suggest to the developers to enhance or improve this game as it stands now?
3 things.
For the love of... Go ahead, Faith.
3 things. We need custom ranks. We have only 6 ranks available, and
I know, right?
depending on how you set up the corporation, like Equinox Industries, needs at least 3 more ranks to be remotely workable. At least not in a way so that basically everybody that just freshly joins the corp has access to every single hangar or some shit. So that's the kind of things that definitely need to be adjusted. The corp management needs a bit more CEO input rather than here's your framework. Either you work with that or you don't, and you're basically AWOL. That's one of the big things. The second thing is member cap. It's been an ever-running theme, and we have corps that need 5 fully decked out corporations to even hold their entire membership, bloody being one of them. And this just doesn't work. It doesn't work on the scale of the gameplay that EVE allows, especially once time dilation and most likely a player cap per system becomes a thing in December with the sovereignty update as well. We will see even bigger fleets by that point. And right now, both fleet management and corporation management is absolutely horrid. And it's kind of a running theme, really. Like, all things seem to be somewhat arbitrarily capped. You can only have 10 corps in an alliance. You can only have up to 200 members in a corporation. You can only have up to 80 relationships on the diplomacy level. I mean, we kind of like shift around that by using both alliance diplomacy as well as corporation diplomacy to effectively double our diplomacy slots. But 80, that's like, especially given how few members fit in a single corporation and how many secondary, tertiary, and so on corporations are being created to even hold all the players, your diplomatic standings just blow up just because you have to cover like, okay, this is SSS1, this is SSS2, this is SSS3, this is SSS4. This is one corporation. We just already used 4 of our 80 slots just because it can't fit all in one corporation. So definitely there needs to be a big rethinking on how they tackle limiting those kind of features, because on all kinds of scale, EVE it doesn't matter if it's Echoes or if it's online, Eve just is a very, very special thing on the matter of scale. And I think the current systems are definitely not supporting the natural scale that Eve will just build up into.
That's a very good point. I definitely think scalability is going to be a big component in this. I know for us, like fleets in groups of 10. The only thing I don't mind about that is I feel like it's giving more of my members a chance to learn how to become a fleet commander, or at least how to give basic fleet commands. But it does drive us a little bit insane. We're definitely looking forward to when they expand that number. I think that'll be nice. But as far as where I'm at a much smaller scale, so that's not necessarily an issue I face as much. And then Bloody, was there
I got two things. I want corporate contracts.
Yes.
And please, for the love of God, fix the standings, because we have blues that show up neutral or red until you actually go into their profile and check to see who they are. And it is ridiculous when I'm at war and I got to do that for every single person coming in. Fix it. Please fix it.
Yep, 100%. I do notice that sometimes the standings is a little bit buggy, so which is pretty bad if you're going into a war and then you end up shooting your own. Yeah, that's definitely a mechanic that I think that needs to get kinked out. Have you guys heard of the chat ban feature?
Yes.
That's something that I'm really interested to get fixed. I actually happened to one of my own members yesterday. We were in a fight, and we actually have evidence. I'm going to be doing a video a little bit later about this to show what was happening, because we did get the enemy to actually admit that they did use this exploit. I would consider it an exploit. But what it means is someone can report you 10 times really fast, and then your member will pretty much be banned. It's a known issue. Other teams have experienced and faced it. But this really does create a problem in terms of games for war, where if you have your members speaking in local, you can actually have your team banned. It's a really dirty tactic. I don't like it. And so, yeah, I think in terms of if I was to ask for any changes, that would be one that needs to get fixed, because we don't want to have our teams banned out of war. Like, that's just such a lame way to win. I don't know.
Absolutely. That's why we pretty much have a rule in Elysium that you just don't talk in local ever. Don't ever talk in local. That way we don't ever get caught up in that mess.
But yeah, it has to be fixed. I mean, this is just an absolute nightmare. I can understand probably why they implemented that, given the extreme amount of real money trade spam, especially in the systems close or in an actual trading hub, like Jita, for example. But that's not a good solution. Like, automated solutions in any kind of game I have witnessed so far have always led to pretty much to a push into exploiting that for personal gains or corp gains. And that is something that they have to fix ASAP. And in my honest opinion, there should just be no other punishment for people that actively abuse that to gain a benefit in game than a permanent clone ban, because that is just one of the dirtiest way to interact with your own community inside of the game. Just abusing a system like that, which, while actually in place for a good cause, catching actively problematic players quite early, the way it is used right now, I just can't condone it whatsoever, and I think people that are actively abusing it just need to be straight up shown the door. Permaban. That's the least I think should be there as a return punishment for those that abused it.
I definitely think it's a bad abuse. I think a few of our guys kind of had a little bit of a clash on opinion. Some of them found that it was, because the devs have introduced it, it's not necessarily the player's fault for exploiting. Personally, I think it actually is stealing money from another player, because if someone is paying for an account on an Omega and you get them banned for a certain amount of time, what you are doing is robbing them of their game time. And to me, that is unacceptable. You cannot steal from my members. So for the team that thought that it was okay to chat ban my player, I am going to expose you. I have a video. I have the entire chat. And we're going to be putting that up live a little bit later, so that other people can understand what is going on, and we can push this to the devs as a very serious, dirty trick that we need them to fix, because it's just not working the way that as it stands.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And I mean, to be quite honest about that, people that are trying to argue that this is a mechanic seriously need to reconsider where the difference is between customer support tooling and mechanics. I don't want to necessarily call people out or anything, but this is by all intents, purposes, and definition not a game mechanic. This is a customer support tool, so you can report problematic players straight from inside of the game. This is a quality of life, not mechanic, but tool to assist the community in curating how it develops and removing problematic players. And yeah, it's people that say this is a mechanic, so we are allowed to use it that way just because the developer had an oversight, that's just not going to fly. You can't just rob a store because they didn't have security in place or something, and say, yeah, that's intended mechanic because the store didn't have any kind of theft security or something.
100%. At the end of the day, it's still a total shyster, cheap cheater move. Use your fleets if you guys want to settle issues. Use your fleets. It's the best way to figure out strategy, and honestly, just keep it back in the game. It also, what it does is it does kind of rob, if someone is trying to report an actual issue, it makes it a lot harder for devs to do their job and do their work in terms of, we've got all those fast ISK, bots that we need to get rid of. I mean, there's a lot of other issues that need tending to. So when someone's just willy-nilly, okay, I'm going to just ban this player because, then they can't chat with their team. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a big issue. It's definitely been known, but looking for, more support in the community to make sure that we push this as a very high priority to the devs. Along with the standings, I mean, I can't tell you how much it bothers me if I have a blue and they're showing up as neutral. It's it's not, how am I supposed to know who to shoot? Because pretty much if you're not blue in our team, we shoot you.
Yeah, that's how we went too. It's if not blue, shoot it policy, and then I'm having to shell out all kinds of money because you really was blue, and the game didn't say that you were blue. And yeah, it also hurts a lot of relations too when you're dealing with a lot of other alliances and corporations, and you're like, hey, look, we're all supposed to be friends, and they're like, well, you just ripped into us, and it's like, I don't know what to do here. Hold on, I got to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly, and especially when you have, alliances that have a bunch of different corps with different cultures and time zones and different languages. There's already language barriers. It's really hard for people to be like, I thought you were neutral. I didn't see that you were blue. And it's like, yeah, right. Are you doing something shady? It's hard to believe. It's hard to know what's true. So I definitely think those are a few really, really good areas that they could immediately improve the game. Now, in terms of large fleet battles, when it comes to being an FC, what do you guys think in terms of being outnumbered? I mean, you guys came with a lot of numbers. Do you think players that have smaller fleets but have, really skilled FCs can still utilize some sort of strategy to overcome larger fleets?
Absolutely. We have seen that being done really early in the game by the Crabs. So I can't remember the corporation that uploaded a video. We were 5 to 8 people or something, and they killed a fleet of 35 plus people straight up from the get-go on the station. Number is not everything. I'd say number is 33% of the game. 33% is commanding the hard skills, discipline, knowing how to actually fly and pilot a ship, and the last 33% certainly is fitting.
100%.
I also noticed that without warp bubbles, there's no way to lock anybody down. So a lot of your PvP engagements are a lot more cat and mouse. You're chasing people around from system to system or from planet to planet or to wherever. So it's a lot more, you have to be a lot more tactical. Try to catch them where they're going, maybe if you're lucky. Already have it set up for them when they get there or something. There's a lot more planning to it than there is in EVE Online for sure.
100%. And now, without further ado, I was going to show a few kill mails that I had picked out just to see a few of these fittings on some of the guys you had fought, just to check out what was going in this battle and what you had faced in some of these practice rounds. So let's see. One of the first ones we noticed was a Manticore frigate that got taken down by Ventures. So this was a definitely interesting kill. Do you guys know anything about the Venture kills on a Manticore frigate?
Well,
we're talking about Ventures killing the Manticore.
Yeah, Ventures make good bait when you set them up for battle.
Not only that, but at the moment, Let's just say targeting takes time, and that is certainly a recommendation to double check on what a venture can do, because a venture actually is really fast at targeting other ships.
That's interesting. I know that a few teams have now been utilizing this venture tactic, but I haven't gotten to see many kill mails that show it, so that was a pretty fun one to see. Let's see the next kill mail we have. I noticed some of the team you had been fighting was still utilizing civilian modules. Just want to say to any of the new players out there, get the civilian modules off of your ship. It's so easy to get other modules that you can pop on there that will make it a lot more valuable and useful. So the civilian stuff is just basically just trash it out, just get rid of it. How many ships would you say that you fought had civilian weaponry, to your knowledge?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because I've literally fought ships that didn't have anything supplied on them at all or anything on them. So, I'm going to go with it's new people that don't know how to play the game yet.
Ah, okay. So not even having any fittings on, no modules, no rigs, nothing.
No, nothing at all.
I don't know how that necessarily works, but yeah, I think it's a little bit of a learning curve for some people to understand. You really do have to place those modules on your ships. You do have to use rigs. We have a phrase in our team: don't ever fly a naked bee. You don't want to have a naked ship. Make sure you put those modules and rigs on them, because you spend all this time getting, either getting the ISK to buy the ship or getting the resources to build it, and now you just have to go on that last little effort or journey to get the modules and rigs. Super important. So let's see, one of the next ones we had, I noticed that somebody was using a stabber trainer but using it for mining. So that was another interesting one I saw, using mining lasers on a stabber trainer. Not sure if this was because they were actually mining with it or if it was just because they don't know which weapons to use. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I can't even begin to tell you because I'm pretty sure that was during a large engagement. That's just kind of what they threw at us.
I'll give the pilot that pulled that out of the hangar the benefit of the doubt that he just misclicked the modules and wanted to fit something else instead of the mining lasers.
He's like, these
I've
lasers.
I've seen mining mammoths, which is arguably not as bad as people make it out to be. Simply, it's a perfect, like, just park it in high stack and let it mine for like hours on end for like 17k ore hold. You can do that with a mammoth, but a stabber, nah, not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, benefit of the doubt, I guess.
Yeah, just also understanding, I guess, what ship you're working with, what are its buffs, what are the bonuses. And then speaking of one of the last ones that I'm going to be sharing is this little gem with the Caracal trainer using the civilian decomposers. This is probably the one that gave me the biggest giggles. Decomposers are probably not going to do very well on a Caracal, especially not civilian ones. What are your guys' takes on this? When you see weapons that don't belong to a ship, what runs through your head?
Honestly, I look at it as the amount of competition I'm going to have in the rest of the Eve Echoes universe, so I'm not really too worried.
Personally, I think that it's good that people are trying out things. The last thing we want is just like the same cookie cutter fit on every single alliance, because that is the current meta. That has the biggest alpha damage, that has the biggest engagement range, and the like best capability to dictate range or whatsoever. So yeah, I think it is cool that people are actively trying out to break the meta. That is necessary. That is important, because that way you can figure out fittings that nobody would have thought you would actually bring to the table. However, as you already mentioned, if it gets into the territory of civilian, I mean, something is still better than nothing, but hey, may not be the best module to fit on an active ship.
I'm just like, I swear I could do Radic, like just basic encounters and get something a little bit better than a decomposer. But hey, that's just me, I guess, yeah, if they have something that's better than nothing, as we found out some of these enemies had absolutely no modules on their ship. Did you guys get any good loot? Any great ships that you guys fought that you wanted to point out, or any really large kills that you found were substantially pretty interesting?
Generally, the mammoths and some good, highly stocked maulers are pretty good. We've been doing actually really well catching people trying to travel through our systems that are carrying full holds full of stuff like they're moving to a location, and we're just having to pick up all their goodies for them.
Oh my, that's always the sad thing when someone has just been hauling a ton of goods and then you catch them. We had a guy who we killed and he was actually begging in local, please, please don't. I think he had maybe 2 bill worth of items in his ship.
One
So,
of my pilots actually managed to pop somebody. I don't even know what hull he was flying, but he had everything from his station in his backpack. And it was exactly on the day the level 4 battleship command ship dropped as a lock-in reward. And that ship was on the killmail, much to everyone's confusion that saw that killmail. Why do you do this? Why do you bring this out, especially in nullsec? I think it was a venture that was actively mining on top of that. Why?
that is a definitely interesting play. And that kind of brings me to one other question in terms of there's been a lot of salt about the fix to the autopilot feature. What is your guys' take on that? Do you think that has made Echoes a less casual game? And how has that affected your teams?
Well, personal opinion, they have a section for casual that's high sec. That's where you can go and be casual. When you come out to null sec, that's not for you to be casual in. So yes, no, autopilot should not work anymore. That's a great way for somebody, a fleet of 100 people, to autopilot to your locations, log off, and never be touched till they get to your location. And that gives somebody an unfair advantage, absolutely.
Personally, I think that this was an absolutely needed fix. Not because it makes the game less casual, but just because of the immense implicacies it would have down the line, especially once sovereignty hits. The thing is, at the moment, everybody is pretty much raging about it to a certain degree, which I can understand, because people do not want EVE Echoes to become EVE Online, to which I agree to a certain extent. But the issue at hand is more intricate than just a simple bug fix that made autopilot immune. The entire game has to be thought about as a mobile experience, and there needs to be more mechanics implemented that facilitate this becoming one of the key aspects of the game. Especially when you look at the bug fix, what a lot of people seem to not understand is the possibility for abuse. The last thing you want to do is in your very few hours of playtime when you're playing this rather casually is actively defending your system, and you just see an entire fleet of ships just fly past you on autopilot because they're immune to any kind of things you do, and they will pilot faster because autopilot is just like a zero delay. The moment you hit gate and are on grid, immediately after that you already are pretty much aligning to the next gate. So that fix was definitely needed, but I do understand the fear that a lot of players have. However, EVE has always been about risk versus reward, and just because a bug was fixed that affected autopilot does not mean that nullsec is now more dangerous. It is more like nullsec is now working as intended.
100%. And especially too because interdictor bubbles aren't out yet. I'm just like, guys, like nullsec is null security. That means no security. It means you are going to the danger zone. So, just understanding what the difference is. I really liked how you placed it, Bloody. The high sec is for casual players. That is where you can go and be 100% safe. You are 100% not going to lose your ships. There is no risk. You are 100% safe. Safety makes safe. But if you want to dive deeper into the game and explore some of the other components, you will have to take a little risk. And with risk comes reward. So just as much as you can, die out in nullsec, if you learn the right type of game mechanics, you can also not only survive, you can thrive. So just understanding that it's okay to have to play the game. Don't be scared. You can always find a team to help teach you if you don't know how to play. So that's always one of my biggest pieces of advice. Whenever we end up killing someone, if they're just like, wow, good fight, like I learned a lot, we just say, hey, do you need a team? Oftentimes a lot of EVE players will actually reach out and offer a slot in their team. So, just understanding that those are all available options.
Yes,
Well,
definitely concur with the notion that Eve, no matter if it's echoes or online, has been from the ground up, and that goes with pretty much every sandbox MMO actually, has been primarily a team sport. It is always centered around teamwork. It may be different like 4 years in when people start to skill their characters more broadly rather than try to beeline upwards to like being more efficient at their very specific niche that they selected for their pilot. But yeah, until people have the capability to actually afford the time to invest into skills that are not their main niche, teamwork will be a necessity. And a lot of people seem to approach Eve Echoes as a single player MMO, which by nature of being a sandbox is so far from what it actually is.
100%. I think too, there's such big capability. I mean, we're already having a coalition in here. I mean, that's a mass amount of teams. A bunch of alliances, a bunch of corps. I mean, there is just so many layers to this, and it's only going to continue to grow. I'm just really excited to see how this is going to affect Sov when it comes out, to see if you guys, how that lands territory. I know we're kind of in a little bit of further locations. We have now an alliance who's forming up near us, and they've placed down a capsular outpost up in the north, so that's a little interesting.
Yeah,
We're
I read
gonna see
about
how that goes. Definitely, yeah. We went and murder balled our fleets on there just to go see kind of what they had. Had a little fun, had a nice brawl fest out there. So just really good. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is fit up your ships, work with your team, try to learn game mechanics as best you can, and from there, that's you're gonna have a good time. If you just let your fleets collect dust, probably gonna have a bad time. So, well,
Always keep on practicing.
100%. Yeah, you gotta practice, right? Always gotta find that target practice. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Is there any last shout outs you want to give before we close up the show?
I just want to say I'm so proud of Elysium Alliance and everything that they have done. We are working awesomely, and we are constantly moving up.
And I would like to say that, of course, the game is young, the alliance is young, the coalition is young. Mistakes will be made, but at the end of the day, all I see is growth on a daily basis, learnings that are being taken away from every mistake that is made, and that even extends to everybody outside of the alliance. Like, we're just, as a community overall, playing Eve Echoes right now, just massively collecting knowledge about how does it differ between Eve Online and Eve Echoes, and what can you actually do within Eve Echoes itself. So yeah, that's definitely something I just want to commend, that people are taking that approach, and that they should never stop doing this, because at the end of the day, the loser is the one that stops learning from their own mistake.
100%. I know that they say the only way to win Eve is if you quit, but personally, I think winning is a mindset. So if you just continue having a good time, one of the most important things that a team should have is good morale. When we lose our ships, we laugh about it, because they are literally invisible little ships, and you can just get more. It does. There are definitely some heated emotions that come into these games, a lot of right politics, but at the end of the day, we're all people who enjoy playing this space game together, so let's continue making it great and continue building our story. All right.
And ISK is so easy to make.
Absolutely.
100%, especially if somebody else has been farming it in their mammoth, and then you get to jump on them. Nothing better than when dinner delivers itself, right?
Sometimes you generate this,
absolutely.
sometimes you bring it to somebody else.
100%. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining, and we'll leave this with a battle scene from the battle you guys have had, and we'll see you next time, and we'll be looking forward to seeing your coalition as it grows. Bye, guys.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
having
for the
us.
invite. Have a great night.